Picture this: Yellowstone National Park, a ranger on routine patrol. A call comes in, there's a fire near the spring. He checks in on the radio. This isn't a tourist fire, and heads out. 4 hours later, his Jeep is found empty. Keys, canteen, map, notebook, all in place. Tracks lead from the vehicle to the spring and vanish 50 meters before the water. Beyond that, nothing. No boots, no clothing, no prints. Police find a circle of stones, ash, arrows made of branches, symbols pressed into the grass. The radio switched off. Cameras, silent. Tourists saw nothing. The dogs follow the trail to the spring and stop, as if the scent dissolves in the air. Now consider this. How can a person vanish in the most watched part of Yellowstone, surrounded by cameras and tourists? Who or what was waiting for him at the spring that evening? Who leaves circles, ash, and marks around the place someone disappears? And why do those who find strange objects after the disappearance never want to come back? September 3rd, 2005, Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming. At 1600 hours, Ranger David Larsen, 29 years old, radioed park headquarters, reporting he was heading to Old Faithful Geyser to investigate complaints about unauthorized fires. His voice was calm, but he noted, "The fire marks look strange." At 2000, when David's shift ended, he didn't answer base calls. By 2200, his Jeep was found, parked at the Old Faithful Overlook, keys in the ignition. David, an experienced ranger, had disappeared from one of the busiest spots in the park. David wore the standard ranger uniform, a green jacket, brown pants, size 10 Merrill boots, and a park emblem hat. His radio, clipped to his belt, was left in the Jeep, switched off, with the battery nearly dead. On the front seat lay a map of Yellowstone, with a red marker circling a point 2 kilometers from the geyser near a hot spring. In the corner of the map, in David's handwriting, was written, "Ash, 1700 hours." Next to the map, park police found a handful of gray ash scattered on the seat, not resembling Yellowstone's volcanic soil. The disappearance site puzzled everyone. Old Faithful Geyser, a popular park spot, drew hundreds of tourists in September. The overlook where the Jeep was parked was surrounded by paved paths and wooden walkways leading to the geyser. Within a 500-meter radius stretched an open plain, scattered with sparse pine trees, without thick brush or deep ravines. Security cameras at the overlook, checked later, captured David at 1630, walking toward the trail, but did not record his return. His boot prints, clear on the dry ground, led from the Jeep to the spring, 2 kilometers away, and stopped 50 meters before the water. Park police were called at 2230. Inside the Jeep, besides the map and ash, they found David's canteen, half full, and his notebook. The last entry read, "Fire not tourist. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no damage." A tourist passing by at 1700 hours reported seeing a ranger who matched David by the spring, calm in demeanor. Another witness, a cafe worker at the overlook, noticed smoke near the spring at 1800 hours, but paid it no mind. Dogs brought to the scene at dawn tried following the trail, but lost David's scent at the spring, where the ground was hot and damp. Yellowstone, with its geysers and open plains, was familiar territory for David Larsen, who had worked in the park for 5 years. His disappearance, from a busy, heavily monitored spot, with a map, ash, and unfinished notes left behind, seemed utterly illogical. Park police began their investigation, focusing at first on accident or assault. But the first hours revealed David Larsen's case hid a tangled story involving fire and ash. David Larsen was born in Bozeman, Montana. By 2005, when he vanished, he was 29 years old. He had been a Yellowstone Ranger for 5 years. Living in a modest apartment in Gardner, 8 kilometers from the park, David was known as a man devoted to his job, with keen eyes for detail and a passion for protecting nature. Friends and colleagues respected his calm, but they noticed in the month before he disappeared, he became obsessed with tracking unauthorized fires. Those traits, once part of his work, would later become key to the complicated case shaking Yellowstone. David's routine was strict. Every morning he arrived at the park by 6 a.m., had coffee at base, and set out on patrol. His Jeep, an old 1999 Ford Ranger, was packed with maps, canteens, and notebooks where he recorded tourist violations. David loved Yellowstone, especially its geysers. He often said, "This land breathes." He kept a detailed journal noting animal movements, weather, and tracks. He moved to Gardner in 2000 after working as a forest ranger in Montana, seeking a place where he could feel nature. His $35,000 annual salary covered rent and gear expenses. David was saving for a trip to Alaska, dreaming of seeing Denali. He kept $2,000 in a Bozeman bank account. He had no debts or criminal record. But his friend, Ranger Tom Kelly, mentioned David avoided personal conversations, preferring solitude in the park. He was not married, but dated a teacher from Gardner, who broke up with him in 2004, citing his obsession with work. David's social life was limited to the park base and occasional meetings with Tom. He patrolled the geysers, checked on tourists, and trained rookies. Conflicts were rare. In August 2005, he fined a group for an unauthorized fire, but they paid up without argument. Tom shared that, a month before disappearing, David became more focused on fire traces, especially near the hot springs. On August 25th, he showed Tom a photo of a strange fire ring 3 kilometers from Old Faithful, encircled by stones, and said, "That's not tourists." Police later checked the spot, finding only ash. His attention to detail bordered on paranoia, showing in small ways. 2 weeks before he vanished, David began lingering at springs, checking the ground. A tourist interviewed by police recalled that on September 1st, David asked about circles of stones near the geyser, but didn't say why. A colleague, Miss Hart, noticed he was writing phrases like "ash knows" in his notebook, which she thought was a joke. On August 30th, David returned to base with a handful of ash, claiming it's not from wood. Tests showed it was ordinary wood ash, but David looked unsettled. Financially, he was stable. His Jeep, bought in 2002, stood at the base. His bank account showed no transactions after August 28th, when he paid $30 for gas. Police checked his apartment. Everything was there, except a jacket and boots he wore on September 3rd. Another detail came up later, about his habits. Tom mentioned David kept a fire log, marking fires and their locations. A week before he disappeared, he showed Tom a map with a circled point near a spring, saying, "Something's wrong here." That map, found in the Jeep, became a key piece of evidence. A tourist sighting added to the mystery. 2 days before vanishing, the tourist saw a ranger near a geyser, standing over a pile of ash, as if studying it. Park workers interviewed by police noticed nothing suspicious. Another small detail, on September 2nd, David bought a new notebook for $8, even though the old one was nearly empty. These details, ash, notes, circles of stones, seemed like routine work until they became part of a deepening mystery surrounding his disappearance. David Larsen was a ranger whose life revolved around Yellowstone. His disappearance shook the park, where colleagues called him Dave, a geyser guardian and friend. But oddities, his obsession with fires, notes about ash, circles of stones, left questions investigators were only beginning to unravel. Yellowstone National Park, spanning Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, was the largest reserve in the United States in 2005, covering 9,000 square kilometers. This section, among the most visited, was surrounded by open plains, paved paths, and wooden walkways leading to hot springs. The ranger base where David began his shift was 5 kilometers from Old Faithful Geyser. The nearest town, Gardner, lay 50 kilometers away. The area, busy and well-organized, made the disappearance of an experienced ranger in the park's center nearly impossible. Yet this is precisely where David's trail ended. Old Faithful, a geyser erupting every 90 minutes, drew up to 3,000 tourists daily in September. The overlook where David's Jeep was found was the hub of a zone surrounded by parking lots, a cafe, and an information center. Paths led from the overlook to the geyser and hot springs, located between 1 and 3 kilometers away. The terrain was flat, with sparse pines and grassy meadows, and no ravines or thick forests within 5 kilometers. The nearest hot spring, marked on David's map, stood 2 kilometers out, surrounded by rocky soil and steam rising from the earth. The area around the geyser was open. Paved paths and wooden ramps, built for tourists, made getting lost unlikely. Security cameras at the overlook, checked by police, monitored the paths and parking. Lights lit the zone at 30-meter intervals. On the day David vanished, the weather was perfect. Temperature, 25 degrees Celsius. Humidity, 40%. Wind, 3 meters per second. No precipitation. The dry soil preserved tracks. But police found only David's boot prints, leading from the Jeep to the spring and ending 50 meters from the water. The hot earth, reaching temperatures up to 60 degrees Celsius, hindered the dogs, which lost the scent. Yellowstone was under tight ranger control. In 2005, the park employed 200 staff, constantly patrolling areas like Old Faithful. Cameras installed in the 2000s covered 70% of the viewing area, and radios provided constant contact with base. David, who knew the park after 5 years, could not have gotten lost. The trails were clearly marked, springs were fenced. The dangers, bears, hot springs, were familiar. But on the day of his disappearance, no bears were sighted, and the water in the spring, 2 meters deep, showed no trace of anyone falling in. Another detail, raising only more questions, had to do with the tracks. At the spring, where David's boot prints ended, police found a circle made of stones surrounding a mound of ash. The stones, ordinary for Yellowstone, had been arranged with unusual precision, drawing suspicion. The ash found in his Jeep did not match the local volcanic soil, but was identified as wood ash. A park worker who inspected the spring said that tourists sometimes built stone circles, but this one looked too perfectly done. It entered the report as minor. Yellowstone, with its open trails, cameras, and crowds of tourists, was a place where a ranger's disappearance seemed impossible. Yet David vanished 2 kilometers from the geyser, leaving behind his Jeep, his map, and the ash. Bootprints ending at the spring and a circle of stones hinted at something odd, but the terrain gave no cover. The park, so familiar and full of people, became the first link in a chain of mysteries surrounding David Larsen's case. On the morning of September 4, 2005, Yellowstone Park Police received a report. Ranger David Larsen, 29, had failed to return after a patrol at Old Faithful. By 7 a.m., 3 officers and 2 rangers arrived at the overlook, finding his Jeep parked with keys in the ignition. On the seat, a map with a circled marker by the hot spring, a handful of ash, and a notebook reading, "Fire Not Tourist." David's boot prints led to the spring 2 kilometers away, then stopped 50 meters from the water. Park police worked with 2 theories: an accident, falling into the spring, or an attack, perhaps connected to the mysterious fire traces. Both seemed plausible, but within the first day, new details emerged, and the case grew tangled. The accident theory rested on the danger of the hot springs. The spring marked on David's map had water at 90 degrees Celsius and a depth of 2 meters. Police considered that, while inspecting fire traces, David might have slipped on hot ground and fallen into the water. His friend, Ranger Tom Kelly, confirmed David often approached the springs closely, studying violations. But the absence of a body, clothing, or signs of a fall weakened this version. Dogs brought on September 4th lost the scent at the spring, where the ground was damp and hot. The attack theory arose from strange evidence. Ash on the Jeep's seat, unlike local soil, and a stone circle around a pile of ash at the spring looked unusual. The notebook entry, "Fire not tourist," hinted David had noticed something suspicious. Tom mentioned that a week before disappearing, David spoke about circles of stones, which he thought were not random. Police suggested he might have encountered a group conducting an unauthorized ritual, possibly connected to the fires. A tourist who saw smoke at 6 p.m. became a key witness, but linked it to an ordinary fire. The lack of signs of struggle or blood in the Jeep weakened the attack hypothesis. On-scene evidence raised more questions. The map with a circled point and the note, "Ash, 1700 hours," showed David planned to inspect the spring. The radio, switched off with a dead battery, lay in the Jeep, unharmed. The half-full canteen bore only David's fingerprints. Boot prints, clear on the dry earth, ended without other tracks or tire marks. Police noted the stones at the spring were arranged neatly, unusual for tourists. Other details reinforced the ritual undertone. A cafe worker, interviewed on September 4th, reported seeing a group of tourists in dark jackets gathering stones near the geyser the day before David vanished. He didn't connect them to David, but police checked the visitors. None of the group had any criminal record, and they left the park on September 2nd. Another clue, a tourist's testimony. He saw David at 16:30, holding a map and looking focused. The Overlook's camera showed no suspicious persons after 1600 hours, and the parking lot remained full of tourist vehicles. Police interviewed park staff. Yellowstone, where everyone knew David as Dave, was shaken by the news. Rangers reported that in the week before September 3rd, they'd noticed smoke near the springs, but attributed it to tourists. Police checked bus and taxi routes, but none passed the geyser after 1700 hours. Locals with criminal records, including a petty thief, were interviewed, but no connection was found. The theory of attack seemed plausible because of the ash and the stone circle, but without evidence of a struggle, it remained only a theory. Investigators focused on Tom and the tourists. Police pulled data from cameras and radios and inspected the Jeep, finding no foreign fingerprints. The map, ash, and notebook were sent for analysis, but only confirmed David's handwriting. By the morning of September 5, 2005, the disappearance of Ranger David Larsen, 29 years old, had become the main topic in Yellowstone National Park. Park police mobilized 7 officers, 2 detectives, and 30 volunteers, rangers, and locals to search the Old Faithful area. The search operation covered the geyser and hot springs area. By September 7th, about 50 volunteers scoured 10 square kilometers around Old Faithful, including trails, plains, and spring banks. The open terrain, with sparse pines and grass, offered no hiding places, but no clothing or shoes were found. 2 search dogs from Bozeman followed the trail from the Jeep to the spring, where David's boot prints ended. They lost the scent 50 meters from the water, where hot ground hampered their work. The handler noted the dogs seemed frozen, as if the trail vanished suddenly. This weakened the accident theory. A fall into the spring would have left a scent beyond. New discoveries raised more questions. On September 6th, a volunteer found David's size 10 Merrill boots 1 kilometer from the spring in the grass, unworn, undamaged. Tom Kelly, David's friend, confirmed the boots were his, but could not explain why they were removed. No barefoot prints were found, and the ground around was dry. Police suggested the boots could have been lost, yet their neat arrangement caused doubts. A park worker inspecting the stone circle noted a branch next to the ash pile, laid out like an arrow pointing west. This was noted as possibly coincidental. Equipment checks revealed little. A camera at the overlook showed David at 16:30 walking toward the trail, but not returning, nor any suspicious persons. Cameras by the cafe and the center covered 70% of the area, but after 1700 hours, only tourists appeared. David's radio, checked on September 6th, sent no signals after 1600 hours. Police requested base recordings. The last contact was his message about strange fire traces. A tourist who saw smoke at 1800 hours said it came from the spring area, but saw no people. Searches continued until September 10th, covering a radius of 15 kilometers. Volunteers found only an old bottle, unrelated to the case. The police deployed a helicopter, but the open plains and lack of forests offered no clues. Another detail arose on September 9th. A tourist reported seeing ash scattered near the trail in a circular shape, but paid it little mind at the time. Police checked the spot, but the wind blew the ash away. By September 11th, the investigation slowed. A detective wrote, "The evidence hints at a ritual, but does not confirm it." By September 12, 2005, the investigation into Ranger David Larsen's disappearance had hit an insurmountable dead end. Park police and volunteers had covered 15 square kilometers around Old Faithful, checked cameras, interviewed witnesses, and analyzed evidence, but no lead answered any question. By September 13th, the police reduced the team to 3 officers. A detective noted in the report, "No evidence supports an attack." Yellowstone, shaken by the ranger's disappearance, grew quiet. Tom Kelly, David's friend, stopped speaking about the case. Theories collapsed. The map, the ash, and the boots remained the only clues, leading nowhere. By mid-September 2005, the investigation had practically stopped. The accident and attack theories, undermined by lack of evidence, left Park Police with no leads. The overlook at Old Faithful, where David's Jeep was found, stood deserted. Volunteers gave up their search. Tom Kelly avoided all talk of the case. The ranger base removed David's photograph from the board. Police reports began to contain entries that defied the logic of an ordinary investigation. Strange findings and rumors, never included in official documents, deepened the feeling that the hot springs held a secret, one slipping just out of reach. The first oddity surfaced on September 14th, when Ranger Miss Hart, reviewing the logbook at base, found a note tucked between the pages, handwriting resembling David's. "Ash by the spring, check September 3rd, 2005. The note referenced the area where his boot prints ended. Yet the logbook had already been checked on September 5th, and no note was there then. Tom Kelly confirmed the handwriting looked like David's, but said David never left notes in the shared logbook. Police suggested another ranger, copying David's style, might have left the note for fire inventory. The detail entered the case file with the label, "Likely inspection error." Another detail emerged on September 15th, during a second interview with the tourist who saw smoke at the spring at 1800 hours on September 3rd. He now clarified the smoke rose from a stone circle with ash laid out in a triangle nearby. He didn't approach, but noted the ash looked too neat for an ordinary fire. Police examined the spring, but wind and tourists had scattered the pattern. The statement was recorded as unconfirmed. No other witnesses had seen it. Later it emerged that teenagers walking the park might have arranged the ash as a prank, but they weren't questioned. The next discovery came on September 16th, when a volunteer, still searching unofficially, found 500 meters from the spring a branch arranged as an arrow, pointing toward a stone circle hidden in the grass. About 10 stones enclosed another ash pile, and nearby lay a burned piece of paper with no text. Tom said David had photographed similar circles a week before he vanished. Police theorized the paper was tourist litter and the circle their work. The case note read, "Not relevant to the investigation." Another oddity fueling rumors was the cafe worker's statement, taken on September 17th. He reported that, on the night of September 4th, around 2 a.m., he heard a whisper on the radio, a voice much like David's repeating, "The ash is burning." The base radio was on. The transmission lasted 5 seconds, then cut off. Police checked the equipment, but found no evidence of a signal from David's radio. Its battery was dead. The worker, an older man, admitted he might have made a mistake from exhaustion, but insisted the voice was clear. His statement was filed as unconfirmed, believed to be interference. This detail, excluded from the official report, sparked talk around Yellowstone of Dave's voice. Another lead came on September 18th when Ranger Miss Hart, checking the map storage box at base, found a note written in handwriting resembling David's. Circle by the spring, September 2nd, 2005. The note referred to the area where the stone circle was found, yet the box had been inspected on September 6th, and the note wasn't there. Tom Kelly, seeing the note, confirmed the handwriting was similar to David's, but noted David kept his notes in a notebook. Police speculated that another ranger, copying David's handwriting, might have left the note for tracking violations. The detail entered the case file marked, likely unrelated. These details, the note in the logbook, the ash arranged in a triangle, the stone circles, whispers on the radio, and the group with stones, offered no answers. Police considered them coincidental or witness errors. In Yellowstone, talk grew quieter. Tom ceased patrolling the geyser area. The investigation, devoid of evidence, delved into minor oddities, raising questions but creating the illusion that the solution was just out of reach. By late September 2005, the investigation into the disappearance at Yellowstone National Park had become a formality. Park police, exhausted by the collapsed accident and attack theories, cut resources to a single officer handling rare reports. The Old Faithful Overlook, where David's Jeep was found, returned to tourist bustle. The hot springs, where his boot prints ended, were shrouded in steam. Tom Kelly, David's friend, stopped patrolling near the geyser. The ranger base cleared his locker. Police archives gathered notes no one wanted to examine. Strange findings and testimonies, all connected to ash and stones, were all that remained of the investigation. They deepened the feeling that answers lay somewhere in Yellowstone, but were unreachable. Another oddity surfaced on September 21st, when a tourist, interviewed again, reported seeing ash near the spring scattered in the shape of a cross next to the stone circle around 5:30 p.m. on September 3rd. He didn't approach closer, but noted the ash looked fresh. Police checked the site, but rain and tourists had ruined the pattern. His statement was recorded as unconfirmed, since no other witnesses had seen it. The next discovery came on September 22nd, when a volunteer found another stone circle 1.5 kilometers from the spring. Smaller, with 8 stones arranged neatly, it surrounded a pile of ash and a burned branch laid out in a spiral shape. The ash matched the wood ash found in the Jeep. Tom, hearing of the find, said David had mentioned spirals in a conversation a week before. Police assumed the circle was the work of tourists and the branch was discarded debris. The note in the file read, "Not related to investigation." Another detail fueling rumors came from a park security guard interviewed on September 23rd. He reported seeing, around 3 a.m., on September 4th, a figure shaped like a ranger standing by the geyser in a cloud of steam. But the figure vanished when he approached. Cameras checked by police showed nothing. The geyser's steam was thick due to the cool night air. The older guard admitted he might have been mistaken due to fatigue, but insisted the figure resembled David. His statement was filed as unconfirmed, with the assumption it was a mirage from steam. This detail, excluded from the official report, fed rumors at Yellowstone, where talk turned to Dave's shadow. These findings, the note in the box, The ash in the shape of a cross, the new stone circle, the figure in the steam, gave no answers. Police, lacking resources, deemed them coincidental or witness errors. In Yellowstone, people began avoiding any talk of David. By early October 2005, the case of the ranger who vanished in Yellowstone National Park was officially suspended. Park police reclassified the investigation as cold, assigning a single officer to monitor rare reports. Tom Kelly, David's friend, transferred to the Montana base, unable to patrol the geysers. Yellowstone, with its crowds of tourists and steaming springs, returned to routine. The ranger base removed David's name from the schedule. But in the last days of autumn, two final discoveries emerged in the case, seemingly explainable, yet forming a chain of mysteries that left the disappearance an unresolved enigma haunting the park. The first discovery came on October 3rd, when a tourist walking by a hot spring found David's ranger badge lying in the center of a stone circle 2 kilometers from the geyser. About 10 stones encircled a heap of ash, and the badge was clean, untouched by dirt. The tourist told police he had seen smoke by the spring on October 2nd, but didn't approach. Tom confirmed the badge was David's, one he always wore on his jacket. Police suggested the badge had been lost during patrol, and the circle was just tourists arranging stones for photos. Later, a teenager admitted finding the badge on the trail and placing it in the circle for decoration, but never told police. The case note: not related to investigation. The second and most shocking detail surfaced on October 5th. A volunteer inspecting the spring found a burned symbol, a circle with 3 lines inside, like a sun sign, surrounded by ash. The symbol, 30 centimeters across, was made of stones and looked freshly placed. A park worker, questioned by police, said that at 1 a.m. on October 4th he saw steam by the spring that resembled a figure with raised arms, though cameras captured nothing. Police checked the symbol, finding no paint or tools nearby. A tourist suggested it was part of a student project. He'd seen a group with stones there the previous week. The statements were marked unconfirmed, but rumors around Yellowstone spread. People spoke of the geyser ritual. These 2 clues, the ash with the note, the badge in the stone circle, and the symbol by the spring, gave police no new leads. The badge was deemed a chance find, and the symbol was thought to be the work of tourists. Yet their appearance, like a chain of coincidences, confounded the investigation. Tom refused to return to Yellowstone, and the ranger base stopped mentioning David. Police closed the case, finding no evidence of accident or attack. Talk in the park dwindled. But those aware of the discoveries asked one question: how could all this have happened like this? David disappeared, leaving ash, stones, and symbols, leading nowhere, but hinting at a ritual that perhaps never took place. A case that began as routine ended in a series of mysteries, unraveled, yet still unsettling. If I were to form a personal theory, I'd say this: David Larsen delved too deeply into his investigation. Strange circles, ash, mysterious signs, they haunted him. Perhaps he unwittingly witnessed an unauthorized ritual or meeting not meant to be seen. His disappearance, the lack of signs of struggle, and the trail suddenly ending look as if someone or something knew exactly how to erase him. But that is just my hypothesis. It's not certain that David encountered something supernatural. It's quite possible he fell victim to a trap of circumstance the park never explained. What do you think? What happened to Ranger Larsen that night by the spring? Was it an accident, a carefully planned disappearance, or had David uncovered a secret that cost him his life? Write your thoughts in the comments. Let's unravel this mystery together.